Chosen one, listen carefully, because there is something God wants you to understand before you make a decision based on what you see, what you feel, or what someone has told you. There are moments when a person enters your story and you immediately believe you understand their purpose, their character, or their place in your life. But God sees beyond appearances. He sees motives, hidden wounds, private battles, and the things people never say out loud. And today, the message is simple but powerful. Jay may not be who you think. Before you judge, trust, reject, chase, or completely walk away, God wants you to see what He sees. Chosen one. There are people God allows to cross your path who cannot be understood by ordinary perception. You look at their actions and form an opinion. You hear their words and make a conclusion. You notice their distance, their silence, their strange behavior, or even their sudden appearance in your life, and you think you already know what it means. But heaven does not always explain itself through obvious signs. Sometimes God hides a purpose inside a person you would never expect. Sometimes the individual you thought was against you is actually being used to redirect you. Sometimes the person you thought was your answer is actually the distraction that would have delayed your purpose. And sometimes, chosen one, the person you misunderstood is carrying a story you were never given permission to fully know. This is why God is asking you to slow down. Do not let your emotions become your evidence. Do not let one conversation become the entire story. Do not let one disappointing moment convince you that you know someone's heart. And most importantly, do not allow your assumptions to speak louder than God's wisdom. There is something about Jay that you have not understood yet. You may have noticed inconsistencies. You may have felt something unusual whenever this person came around. Maybe Jay became distant when you expected closeness. Maybe they became quiet when you expected an explanation. Maybe they appeared interested and then suddenly pulled away. Maybe they seemed to care but refused to say what was really happening. And perhaps this has left you asking the same question over and over again. What is going on with this person? But chosen one, God may be showing you that the question is not simply, what does Jay feel about me? The deeper question is, what is God trying to reveal to me through this situation? That changes everything. Because when you make the person the center of the story, you become obsessed with their behavior. You analyze every message. You replay every conversation. You wonder why they looked at you a certain way. You notice when they are online. You interpret their silence. You search for hidden meanings in ordinary moments. And slowly, without realizing it, you stop listening to God because you are listening too closely to your own fear. God does not want you trapped in that cycle. Chosen one, there is a reason you have been feeling that something about this situation is deeper than what appears on the surface. But deeper does not always mean romantic. Deeper does not always mean that Jay is secretly in love with you. Deeper does not automatically mean that this person is your destined partner, your enemy, your betrayer, or your miracle. Sometimes deeper means that the situation is teaching you discernment. Sometimes deeper means that God is teaching you patience. Sometimes deeper means that you are being forced to confront an attachment that you thought was faith. And sometimes deeper means that God is preparing you to see someone accurately instead of emotionally. You have to understand this, chosen one. Discernment is not suspicion. Discernment does not mean assuming everyone has hidden motives. Discernment does not mean turning every coincidence into a prophecy. Discernment does not mean believing that every dream, number, name, or unusual event is a supernatural message about one particular person. Discernment means learning to see clearly, and God wants your vision to become clear. Maybe Jay has been misunderstood because you have been looking at the situation through the lens of your own disappointment. Maybe you expected this person to respond differently. Maybe you gave them a role in your future before they ever agreed to carry that role. Maybe you created an entire story around someone because your heart needed an answer. And now God is saying, come back to me. Not because your feelings are meaningless, but because your feelings are not the final authority. There is a difference. Your feelings can tell you what hurts. They can tell you what you desire. They can tell you what you fear, but they cannot always tell you what is true. That is why you must be careful with Jay. Not necessarily because Jay is dangerous, not necessarily because Jay is secretly plotting against you, but because you may be tempted to turn uncertainty into certainty. You may be tempted to say, I know what this means. And God may be saying, you don't know everything yet. That sentence can be difficult for a chosen one to accept. You have been through seasons where you had to become observant because people disappointed you. You learned to notice changes in people's voices. You learned to recognize when someone was pretending. You learned to protect your heart because you discovered that not everyone who smiles at you wants the best for you. Those experiences may have made you perceptive, but they can also make you hypervigilant. And there is a difference between spiritual discernment and emotional hypervigilance. One brings peace and wisdom. The other keeps you constantly searching for danger. God does not want you living in fear of every person who enters your life. So when it comes to Jay, step back. Look at patterns, not isolated moments. Look at character, not charisma. Look at consistency, not promises. Look at fruit, not appearances. And look at what the relationship produces inside you. Does it constantly produce confusion, obsession, fear, and instability? Or does it challenge you to become wiser, healthier, more honest, and more grounded? That does not mean every difficult relationship is automatically bad. Growth can be uncomfortable. Truth can be uncomfortable. Boundaries can be uncomfortable. But there is a difference between healthy discomfort and a relationship that continuously destroys your peace. Chosen one, God does not need you to chase what He has ordained. Remember that. You do not have to manipulate circumstances. You do not have to force communication. You do not have to prove your worth. You do not have to compete with someone else. You do not have to decode every silence. If J is meant to remain in your life, what is real will not require you to destroy yourself to maintain it. And if J is not meant to remain, you will eventually discover that losing the connection was not losing your destiny. Sometimes God removes people because they are not compatible with where you are going. Sometimes God allows distance because you are becoming dependent on a person instead of dependent on Him. Sometimes God permits someone to misunderstand you because He is teaching you that you do not need everyone's approval. And sometimes He allows a person to disappoint you so that you can finally see what you were refusing to see. But hear this carefully. Do not turn this message into an excuse to condemn J. God is not calling you to become judge and jury over someone's life. If J has done something wrong, you can acknowledge it without becoming consumed by revenge. If J has hurt you, you can establish boundaries without hatred. If J has lied, you can stop trusting them without wishing destruction upon them. If J has walked away, you can grieve without begging them to return. That is maturity. That is freedom. And that is what God may be developing inside you. You have been asking God for clarity, but perhaps clarity is not going to come through another message from J. Perhaps clarity will come when you finally stop needing J to explain everything. Think about that. Maybe the closure you have been waiting for is not a conversation. Maybe the closure is understanding that you are allowed to move forward without knowing every detail. Chosen one, some doors close without giving you a detailed explanation. Some people leave without telling you everything. Some friendships end without a dramatic final conversation. Some relationships fade because the season has changed. And if you demand an explanation for every transition, you can spend years standing at doors God has already closed. There is something else you need to understand about J. People can change. The person you knew yesterday may not be the person standing before you today, and you can change too. That means you cannot always judge someone solely by their past, but you also cannot ignore a consistent pattern simply because you hope they will change. Grace does not mean blindness. Forgiveness does not mean unlimited access. Love does not mean abandoning wisdom. Faith does not mean ignoring reality. You can pray for someone and still keep your distance. You can forgive someone and still have boundaries. You can love someone and still recognize that you are not called to walk beside them in every season. Chosen one. This is where many people become confused. They think if God is involved, everything must immediately feel peaceful and obvious. But sometimes God's direction requires patience. You may not know whether J is supposed to stay. You may not know what J feels. You may not know what will happen next, and that is okay. You are not required to know tomorrow in order to obey God today. Your assignment is not to control the future. Your assignment is to remain faithful with what is in front of you. If J reaches out, respond with wisdom. If J does not reach out, do not chase desperately. If J apologizes, evaluate the sincerity in the changed behavior. If J repeats the same pattern, believe what the pattern is showing you. If J respects your boundaries, notice that. If J continually violates them, notice that too. The truth is often less mysterious than we make it. Sometimes we want a supernatural explanation for something that simply requires an honest observation. And perhaps that is one of the things God wants you to see before it is too late. Do not become so fascinated by what J might secretly feel that you ignore what J actually does. Actions matter, character matters, integrity matters, accountability matters. How someone treats people when they have nothing to gain from them matters. How they behave when nobody is watching matters. How they respond when you say no matters. How they respond when you succeed matters. How they respond when you stop giving them attention matters. These things reveal more than mysterious signs ever could. Chosen one, you have been taught to look for signs because you want certainty. But sometimes the clearest sign is consistency. Sometimes the clearest answer is behavior. Sometimes the clearest direction is peace after you stop forcing something. And sometimes the clearest confirmation is that you can finally breathe again. There may have been a time when you thought you needed J to choose you. But God is teaching you that your identity cannot depend on another person's decision. You were not created to spend your life waiting for someone else to validate your worth. You are not less valuable because someone did not recognize you. You are not less loved because someone walked away. You are not less chosen because someone rejected you. And you are certainly not required to convince someone of your value. Let them misunderstand you if they choose to. Let them walk away if they choose to. Let them believe whatever story they want. Your responsibility is to remain aligned with truth, because there is a version of you that exists beyond this situation. There is a future you who is not obsessing over J. There is a future you who has learned to distinguish attraction from assignment. There is a future you who can care deeply without losing yourself. There is a future you who can recognize someone else's importance without making them an idol. And perhaps God is preparing you to become that person now. So do not rush. Do not send the message just because you are anxious. Do not make the decision just because you are afraid of losing the connection. Do not confess everything just because you need relief from uncertainty. Do not walk away in anger just to make someone feel your absence. Let your actions come from wisdom, not emotional pressure. If you need to communicate, communicate honestly. If you need to apologize, apologize sincerely. If you need to establish a boundary, establish it clearly. If you need to wait. If you need to release something, release it. But do not turn your waiting into obsession, and do not turn your faith into fantasy. God can speak to your heart while still asking you to use wisdom. Chosen one, maybe, J, is not who you thought because you had placed this person inside a story that God never promised. Maybe you saw potential and called it prophecy. Maybe you felt chemistry and called it destiny. Maybe you experienced coincidence and called it confirmation. Maybe you wanted something so badly that every small detail became evidence. God understands your heart. He is not condemning you for hoping, but He may be inviting you into something stronger than hope based on assumptions. He is inviting you into trust. Trust means you can say, God, if this person is for me, I do not have to force it. If this person is not for me, I do not have to fear losing them. If there is something I need to learn, show me. If there is something I need to release, give me strength. And if there is something I am misunderstanding, correct me. That prayer changes your posture. You stop demanding an answer. You start seeking truth. And there is a major difference. Chosen one, perhaps the biggest revelation is not who J is. Perhaps the revelation is who you are becoming through this. Because sometimes God uses a confusing relationship to reveal your own patterns. Maybe you learned that you overgive. Maybe you learned that you attach too quickly. Maybe you learned that silence makes you panic. Maybe you learned that rejection triggers old wounds. Maybe you learned that you confuse being needed with being loved. Maybe you learned that you have been trying to earn what should have been freely given. And once you see these things, you can heal them. You can grow. You can stop repeating the same cycle with different people. That may be the blessing hidden inside the confusion. So before it is too late, chosen one, do not miss the lesson because you are obsessed with the person. Do not miss your growth because you are waiting for their return. Do not miss your future because you are trying to understand their past. And do not miss God's voice because you are listening for J. There is a bigger story unfolding. Your life is bigger than one person. Your calling is bigger than one relationship. Your purpose is bigger than one unanswered question. And your peace is too valuable to place entirely in another person's hands. If J belongs in your future, let truth establish that. If J does not, let truth free you. Either way, you win when you choose wisdom over obsession. You win when you choose peace over pursuit. You win when you choose reality over fantasy. You win when you choose God over the need to know everything immediately. And chosen one, perhaps this is the moment where you stop asking, "Oh, do I get J to reveal who they really are?" And start asking, "God, reveal what I need to see." Because that prayer is safer. That prayer is deeper. That prayer leaves room for God to correct your assumptions. And when God corrects you, do not resist because the truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes the truth hurts before it heals. Sometimes God has to remove an illusion before He can give you clarity. Sometimes you have to admit, I was wrong about this person. And that does not make you foolish. It makes you human. You are allowed to have misunderstood someone. You are allowed to have hoped. You are allowed to have believed. But now you are being given an opportunity to see with greater wisdom. So watch, listen, pray. Do not rush to conclusions. Do not make J into a villain without evidence. Do not make J into a soulmate without evidence. Do not make J into your destiny without evidence. Let the truth reveal itself through time, character, consistency, and honest communication. And while you wait, keep living, keep growing, keep building, keep becoming, keep walking, because your life cannot remain paused while you wait for another person's intentions to become clear. God has not called you to stand frozen at the edge of uncertainty. He has called you to walk in wisdom. And perhaps the greatest thing you will discover is that when you stop chasing the answer becomes easier to recognize. Maybe J is not who you think. Maybe they are better than you assumed. Maybe they are weaker than you assumed. Maybe they are struggling with things you never knew. Maybe they are simply human, and maybe that is the point. Not every person needs to be assigned a supernatural role in your story. Some people are lessons. Some are companions. Some are temporary. Some become lifelong friends. Some teach you boundaries. Some teach you forgiveness. Some teach you what love should look like. And some teach you what love should never require. Your responsibility is not to label them prematurely. Your responsibility is to remain awake, remain discerning, remain humble, remain grounded, and above all, remain close to God. Because when you are close to God, you do not have to panic about what you cannot see. You can trust that what needs to be revealed will be revealed at the right time. You can trust that what needs to leave will leave. You can trust that what needs to remain will have the opportunity to prove itself. And you can trust that your destiny does not depend on you manipulating another human being. Chosen one, take a breath. Let the urgency leave your body. You do not have to solve everything tonight. You do not have to understand, completely tonight. You do not have to know what happens next. You simply need to refuse to abandon your wisdom, because your heart is demanding certainty. Let God work in the spaces you cannot control. And as you continue forward, remember this: the person you are trying so hard to understand may not be the only thing God is revealing. He may be revealing you, your heart, your attachments, your fears, your expectations, your boundaries, your strength, your ability to let go, your ability to wait, your ability to love without losing yourself. And when that revelation becomes clear, you may finally understand why this situation had to happen in the first place. Maybe J was never meant to be the final answer. Maybe J was part of the question that led you closer to the truth. Chosen one. And this is where the message becomes even more important. Because once you stop trying to force an interpretation onto J, you begin to notice something you could not see while your emotions were speaking louder than your discernment. You begin to realize that not every mystery is meant to be solved immediately. Some things have to unfold. Some people have to reveal themselves through time. Some situations have to reach a certain point before you can understand why they happened. And sometimes God does not give you the entire picture, because if He showed you everything at once, you would try to control the outcome instead of trusting the process. That is why patience matters here. Chosen one, patience is not passive. Patience is not sitting around waiting for someone to make up their mind while your entire life remains on hold. Patience is the ability to keep moving while refusing to force what has not become clear. It is the ability to say, I do not know what this means yet, but I will not destroy my peace trying to find out. That is strength. You may think strength means getting answers. Sometimes strength means being able to live without them. You may think strength means confronting J immediately. Sometimes strength means knowing when a conversation will bring clarity and when it will only create another cycle of confusion. You may think strength means proving that you were right. Sometimes strength means letting time reveal what arguments never could, because time has a way of exposing what words can hide. Anyone can make a promise. Anyone can say the right thing. Anyone can appear sincere for a moment, but consistency requires character, and character is revealed repeatedly. So watch what happens over time. Do not become obsessed with watching J. Watch your own life too. Notice whether you are becoming more peaceful or more anxious. Notice whether you are becoming more confident or more dependent. Notice whether you are becoming more honest or more secretive. Notice whether you are growing or shrinking. Because sometimes the most important evidence is not what another person is doing. It is what the situation is doing to you. Chosen one, there are connections that feel powerful because they activate something inside you, but activation is not always confirmation. Sometimes someone can awaken emotions that you have buried for years. They can make you feel seen in one moment and rejected in another. They can create excitement, fear, longing, insecurity, and hope all at the same time. And because the emotions are intense, you may assume the connection must be important. But intensity and importance are not the same thing. A storm is intense. That does not mean you are supposed to live inside it. A fire is intense. That does not mean you should hold it in your hands. A wave is powerful. That does not mean you should follow it wherever it goes. You must learn to separate emotional intensity from spiritual direction. That may be one of the greatest lessons hidden inside your experience with J. Maybe you have been asking, why do I feel this strongly? But perhaps the better question is, what is this feeling revealing about me? Maybe you feel rejected because you have been seeking validation. Maybe you feel abandoned because someone touched an old fear. Maybe you feel obsessed because uncertainty has become unbearable. Maybe you feel desperate because you have attached your future happiness to one particular outcome. And if that is what is happening, God may be using the situation to expose the place where you have been giving another person too much power. Chosen one, no human being should have the power to determine whether you believe you are worthy. No human being should have the power to determine whether you wake up hopeful or hopeless. No human being should have the power to determine whether you believe your future is blessed. People can influence you. People can hurt you. People can encourage you. People can disappoint you. But your identity must have a deeper foundation. That is why you have to come back to yourself. Not the version of yourself that existed before, J. Not the version that is waiting for J. Not the version that is trying to impress J. The version of yourself that existed before you began wondering whether someone else would choose you. That person is still there. You have not lost yourself. You have simply been distracted. And maybe God is calling your attention back. Chosen one, there is something powerful about reclaiming your attention. Your attention is valuable. Your thoughts are valuable. Your energy is valuable. Where you repeatedly place them matters. If you spend every morning thinking about what J is doing, every afternoon wondering what J meant, and every night imagining what J might say, then even if J is physically absent, they are occupying a massive part of your life. That is still a form of attachment. And sometimes the person does not have to control you directly because your thoughts are doing the work for them. You replay the conversation. You imagine future conversations. You create scenarios. You analyze signs. You predict reactions. You construct explanations. And eventually you are no longer dealing with the real person. You are dealing with the version of the person living inside your imagination. That is dangerous, chosen one, because you can fall in love with a possibility. You can become angry at an assumption. You can grieve something that never actually existed. You can reject someone because of a story you created. You can chase someone because of a future you imagined. And God may be asking you to return to reality, not because reality is less beautiful, but because reality is where wisdom operates. So ask yourself honestly, who is J when you remove the mystery? Who are they when you stop imagining their hidden intentions? Who are they when you look only at what they consistently demonstrate? And who are you when you stop trying to predict what they will do? Those questions can change your entire perspective. Chosen one, you may discover that J is simply a person who is also figuring life out. Maybe they are confused. Maybe they are afraid. Maybe they are emotionally immature. Maybe they are healing. Maybe they are distracted. Maybe they care but do not know how to communicate. Maybe they do not feel what you hope they felt. Maybe they feel more than they have admitted. You do not need to decide which explanation is true without evidence. Let them communicate for themselves. Let their behavior speak. And if they never communicate, accept that silence is information too. Not necessarily information about their hidden feelings, but information about their willingness or ability to communicate. That distinction matters. You cannot build a healthy relationship on guesses. You cannot build trust on interpretations. You cannot build security on uncertainty alone. At some point, reality has to enter the room. And when it does, chosen one, you must be brave enough to accept it even if it is not what you wanted. That is where real spiritual maturity begins. It is easy to say, God's will be done, when you believe God's will give you what you want. It is much harder to say it when you realize God's will may take you somewhere completely different. But surrender is not surrender if you only surrender when the outcome matches your preference. You have to be willing to let God be God. You have to be willing to say, if this is not for me, I do not want to force it. That sentence may feel terrifying at first, but there is freedom inside it, because now you are no longer responsible for controlling another person's heart. You are responsible for your own. Chosen one, perhaps you have been trying to make J understand your value. Stop. You do not need to convince someone to see what they are unwilling to see. Perhaps you have been trying to make J regret losing you. Stop. Your healing is not a performance designed to produce someone else's regret. Perhaps you have been trying to become more attractive, more successful, more distant, or more mysterious so that J will finally notice what they lost. Stop. Become better because you are growing, not because you are trying to provoke a reaction. There is a difference between transformation and performance. Transformation says, I am becoming healthier because I deserve to live differently. Performance says, I am becoming different so someone else will finally choose me. The one creates freedom, the other creates another prison. Chosen one, you were never meant to live as an audition. You do not have to audition for love. You do not have to audition for respect. You do not have to audition for friendship. You do not have to audition for someone's attention. The right people will not require you to become unrecognizable just to earn basic consideration. And this does not mean relationships require no effort. Healthy relationships require communication, compromise, patience, forgiveness, and growth. But effort should not be confused with begging. You can work on a relationship. You cannot single-handedly create one. That is something you need to remember when you think about J. If the connection is going to become something meaningful, both people have to participate. Both people have to communicate. Both people have to take responsibility. Both people have to show up. Both people have to be willing to grow. One person cannot carry the entire connection while the other remains emotionally unavailable. And if you find yourself doing all the emotional labor, pause. Ask yourself why. Why are you working so hard? Why are you explaining everything? Why are you always initiating? Why are you always forgiving? Why are you always waiting? Why are you always making excuses? Why are you constantly telling yourself that eventually things will change? Those questions are not accusations. They are invitations to become honest. Chosen one, sometimes we tolerate uncertainty because certainty would require us to make a difficult decision. If you admit that J is not showing up the way you need, then you may have to stop waiting. If you admit that the connection is unhealthy, then you may have to create distance. If you admit that you have become attached to an imagined future, then you may have to grieve that future, and grief is painful. So instead of facing the grief, you keep searching for another sign, another clue, another message, another coincidence, another reason to wait. But eventually you have to ask whether you are seeking God's guidance or simply seeking permission to continue hoping. That is a difficult question, but it can be a freeing one. Because hope is beautiful when it is surrendered. Hope becomes exhausting when it is used to avoid reality. Chosen one, there is nothing wrong with believing that people can change. People can change. There is nothing wrong with believing that relationships can be restored. They can. There is nothing wrong with believing that unexpected things can happen. They can. But faith should never require you to ignore what is happening right now. You can believe in someone's potential without pretending their current behavior is acceptable. You can believe in redemption without volunteering to be repeatedly harmed. You can pray for someone without giving them unrestricted access to you. You can leave room for change without putting your life on pause. That is balanced faith. And balance is what you need now. Because perhaps J is not the only person being tested in this story. Perhaps you are being tested too. Not tested in the sense that God is trying to trick you, but tested in the sense that circumstances are revealing what you truly believe. Do you believe you are worthy without someone's approval? Do you believe that your future can be good even if this relationship does not work? Do you believe that God can redirect you? Do you believe you can survive disappointment? Do you believe that losing someone does not mean losing yourself? Do you believe that unanswered questions can coexist with peace? Those beliefs will determine how you move next. Chosen one, you have to understand that sometimes the door you are staring at is not the only door in your life. You may be staring so intensely at one possibility that you cannot see the opportunities surrounding you. There are friendships you have neglected, dreams you have postponed, skills you have stopped developing, goals you have abandoned, parts of yourself you have neglected. You cannot allow one person's uncertainty to become the center of your existence. There is more life waiting for your attention. There are things you are supposed to build. There are people you are supposed to encourage. There are places you are supposed to go. There are lessons you are supposed to learn. There are responsibilities that require you to be present. And every hour you spend trapped inside the question of, what does J really mean, is an hour you are not fully inhabiting your own life. So reclaim your life, not as a tactic, not to make J jealous, not to make them wonder where you went. Do it because your life belongs to you. Get up, work on your goals, take care of your responsibilities, develop your gifts, strengthen your relationships, rest, read, learn, create, pray, laugh, live. And if J is meant to be part of that journey, they will have to meet you in the life you are actually living. You do not have to abandon your path to stand waiting for someone else's arrival. Chosen one, there is also a warning here about interpreting every unexpected event as proof. Maybe you see the letter J repeatedly. Maybe you hear a name, maybe someone mentions the person. Maybe you dream about them. Maybe you experience a coincidence. You can notice these things without turning them into absolute instructions. Your mind is designed to recognize patterns. When someone is important to you, you naturally notice reminders connected to them. That does not mean every reminder is a divine command. Be careful. Your spirituality should make you wiser, not more fearful. Your faith should make you grounded, not obsessed. Your relationship with God should not depend on decoding endless puzzles. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is simply tell the truth. I miss this person. I am afraid. I want them back. I am disappointed. I do not know what to do. Those are honest prayers. You do not need to make your emotions sound supernatural to bring them before God. Bring the real thing. Bring the confusion. Bring the longing. Bring the anger. Bring the disappointment. Bring the questions. And then be willing to listen. Because sometimes you may discover that the answer you wanted is not the answer you need. You wanted God to say, Jay is coming back. But perhaps you need him to teach you. You will be okay whether Jay comes back or not. You wanted God to say, Jay secretly loves you. But perhaps you need to learn, you deserve love that does not require secret decoding. You wanted God to say, wait, but perhaps you need to hear live. You wanted God to say, fight for this. But perhaps you need to hear, do not fight what is not fighting for you. The unchosen one, these distinctions matter. Because sometimes the thing you are praying to preserve is the thing that is preventing you from moving forward. That does not mean every difficult relationship must end. It means you have to stop assuming that preservation is always the highest goal. Truth is higher, peace is higher, health is higher, integrity is higher, your relationship with God is higher, And if a connection requires you to compromise those things continually, then you need to question the connection rather than question yourself. Chosen one, perhaps. Jay has been placed in your story to teach you something about boundaries. Maybe you have always been the person who gives second chances, third chances, fourth chances. You forgive quickly. You understand everyone's pain. You make excuses for people's behavior. You tell yourself they are struggling. And sometimes that compassion is beautiful. But compassion without boundaries can become self-abandonment. You can understand why someone behaves badly and still decide that you cannot accept the behavior. Those two truths can exist together. You can say, I understand your pain, but I will not allow your pain to become permission to hurt me. That is not cruelty, that is wisdom. Maybe Jay will understand. Maybe they will not. Your boundary does not need their approval. Chosen one, there is another possibility you need to consider. Perhaps you have been so focused on whether Jay is good for you that you have not asked whether you are ready for what you say you want. Maybe you want a healthy relationship, but you still chase emotionally unavailable people. Maybe you want peace, but you are addicted to uncertainty. Maybe you want consistency, but you are attracted to unpredictability. Maybe you want honesty, but you avoid difficult conversations. Maybe you want someone emotionally mature, but you have not learned how to communicate your own needs. This is not about blaming you. It is about preparation. Because sometimes God is not simply preparing the right person for you. He may be preparing you to recognize and sustain something healthy when it arrives. If your only experience of love has been confusion, healthy love may initially feel unfamiliar. If you are accustomed to chasing, mutual effort may feel strangely quiet. If you are accustomed to emotional highs and lows, stability may feel boring. That is why healing matters. You need to become familiar with peace. You need to learn that love does not have to feel like anxiety. You need to learn that attraction does not require uncertainty. You need to learn that communication does not require mind games. You need to learn that someone caring about you should not feel like a detective assignment. Chosen one, maybe this is what Jay has exposed. Not necessarily the identity of your future partner, not necessarily a secret destiny, but your relationship with uncertainty. And once you understand that, you can stop allowing uncertainty to control you. You can say, I do not know, and keep going. You can say, I care, and still have boundaries. You can say, I hope, and still accept reality. You can say, love, and still choose yourself. You can say, I forgive, and still walk away. That is not contradiction. That is maturity. Chosen one, do not let anyone convince you that choosing yourself means you do not love deeply. Sometimes choosing yourself is the only way to love without resentment. Because when you constantly abandon your needs to keep someone else comfortable, eventually resentment grows. Then the relationship becomes a place of silent sacrifice rather than mutual love. You begin keeping score. I did this. I waited this long. I forgave this. I stayed through that. And eventually you expect the other person to repay your sacrifices. But love should not become a debt collection system. If you give freely. If you cannot give freely, communicate your limits. Do not secretly sacrifice and then punish someone for failing to read the sacrifice. This is another place where Jay may be teaching you something. You may have expected this person to recognize how much you have done, but perhaps you never clearly communicated what you needed. Or perhaps you communicated it and they did not respond. Either way, you have information. Use it. Do not keep repeating the same action while expecting a different result. Chosen one, your next chapter requires a different kind of strength. Not the strength to endure everything. The strength to discern what deserves endurance. Not the strength to chase. The strength to wait without obsession. Not the strength to hold on. The strength to release when necessary. Not the strength to prove yourself. The strength to know your worth without proof. And this is why the story with Jay may be more significant than you first realized. The significance may not be that this person is secretly your destiny. The significance may be that the situation is forcing you to become someone who can no longer be manipulated by uncertainty. Someone who no longer confuses attention with commitment. Someone who no longer confuses chemistry with compatibility. Someone who no longer confuses longing with instruction. Someone who no longer confuses suffering with love. Someone who no longer believes that being chosen by another person is proof that they are chosen by God. Because chosen one, your worth existed before anyone chose you. Your purpose existed before anyone noticed you. Your future existed before Jay entered the picture. Your life does not begin when someone finally understands you, and your life does not end when someone walks away. So keep moving, keep your heart open, but keep your eyes open too. Be compassionate, but be discerning. Be hopeful, but stay grounded. Be willing to forgive, but do not erase wisdom. Be willing to love, but do not abandon yourself. And if Jay comes closer, let closeness be demonstrated through consistency rather than imagination. If Jay stays distant, do not fill the distance with fantasies. If Jay speaks honestly, listen. If Jay refuses to speak, accept the limitation. If Jay changes, observe the change over time. If J repeats the same behavior, believe the pattern. Do not let one beautiful moment erase months of reality. And do not let one painful moment erase genuine growth either. Look at the whole picture. That is discernment. Chosen one, you are learning to see the whole picture. And the more you grow, the less you will need dramatic signs to tell you what is happening. You will notice peace. You will notice consistency. You will notice integrity. You will notice whether your boundaries are respected. You will notice whether conversations create understanding or more confusion. You will notice whether you can be yourself. You will notice whether you are becoming healthier. And perhaps one day you will look back at this season and realize that the biggest revelation was never simply about who Jay was. It was about who you were becoming while trying to understand them. Because there was a version of you that needed answers before you could breathe. There was a version of you that needed someone's attention before you could feel valuable. There was a version of you that thought losing a person meant losing a future. But that version of you is changing. You are learning to breathe without answers. You are learning to stand without validation. You are learning to trust without controlling. You are learning to love without disappearing. And that is a transformation no person can take away from you. So when you think about Jay, do not only ask what they are doing, ask what you are becoming. Do not only ask where they are going, ask where you are going. Do not only ask whether they will return, ask whether you will still want the same thing when you have grown into the person you are becoming. Because growth changes desires, healing changes standards, wisdom changes attraction. And once you become healthier, you may look at something you once desperately wanted and realize that you were asking for something that could never give you the peace you were seeking. That realization may hurt, but it can also set you free. And chosen one, freedom is important because God does not want your entire emotional life attached to one unanswered question. You have more to do, more to learn, more to experience, more to build, more to become. So take your attention back, take your peace back, take your confidence back, take your time back. Not because Jay is necessarily bad, but because your life is too valuable to remain suspended while you wait for another person to reveal themselves. Let people reveal themselves naturally. You do not need to interrogate every silence. You do not need to decode every glance. You do not need to manufacture opportunities. You do not need to force proximity. You do not need to create jealousy. You do not need to disappear strategically. You do not need to play games. You simply need to remain authentic, and if Jay is capable of meeting the real you, then let them meet the real you. Not the version of you performing for approval. Not the version of you pretending not to care. Not the version of you trying to look unreachable. Not the version of you trying to appear perfect. The real you. Because anything worth building should be built on reality. And as you continue walking through this situation, there may be another layer revealed. You may begin to notice why certain things happen when they did. You may remember conversations differently. You may realize that something you considered rejection was actually protection. You may realize that something you considered delay was preparation. You may realize that something you considered loss created room for growth. And you may begin to understand why God did not allow you to have every answer when you demanded one. Because if you had known everything too soon, you might have tried to interfere with the process. Sometimes not knowing is protection. Sometimes waiting is protection. Sometimes uncertainty prevents premature decisions. Sometimes silence gives you enough distance to hear yourself think again. And sometimes the person you are desperate to understand becomes less important once you understand yourself. That is where you are heading, chosen one. Toward understanding yourself. Toward recognizing your patterns. Toward becoming comfortable with your own company. Toward learning what healthy connection actually feels like. Toward becoming someone who can walk away from confusion without feeling like they have failed. And perhaps that is why this situation has lasted longer in your mind than you expected. Because it is not only about Jay. It is about the part of you that is ready to grow beyond an old version of love. The part of you that is ready to stop chasing. The part of you that is ready to stop interpreting crumbs as a feast. The part of you that is ready to stop accepting inconsistency simply because the good moments are intense. The part of you that is ready to say, I want something real. Lion, when you genuinely become ready for what is real, you stop being impressed by what is merely intense. You begin looking for stability. You begin looking for honesty. You begin looking for mutual effort. You begin looking for peace. And you begin realizing that someone can make your heart race and still not be good for your life. Someone can be attractive and still be incompatible. Someone can be kind and still not be your person. Someone can care about you and still not be capable of giving you what you need. Someone can be important to your story without being permanent in your life. That is difficult wisdom, but it is wisdom. Chosen one, perhaps Jay has been important. Perhaps they will remain important. Perhaps they will not. You do not have to decide the entire future tonight. You only need to respond to what is true today, and tomorrow will bring its own information. Do not drag tomorrow into today through anxiety. Do not create conversations that have not happened. Do not suffer over outcomes that have not arrived. Stay here. Stay present. Stay grounded. Because when you are present, you can actually see. And when you can see, you can choose. And when you can choose, you are no longer controlled by fear. So if there is one thing to remember as you continue watching this situation unfold, remember this. You do not need to know exactly who Jay is in order to know who you are. You do not need to understand their entire heart in order to protect yours. You do not need their confession in order to make wise decisions. You do not need their return in order to move forward. And you do not need their approval in order to believe that your life has meaning. The more deeply you understand that, the more peacefully you will be able to handle whatever happens next. Because then, whether Jay comes closer or moves farther away, you will not collapse. Whether the story changes or continues, you will remain grounded. Whether the answer is yes or no, you will remain yourself. And that is the kind of freedom you should be pursuing now. Not freedom from caring. Freedom from being controlled by what you cannot control. Not freedom from love. Freedom from the belief that love requires you to abandon wisdom. Not freedom from hope. Freedom from the need to turn every hope into a guarantee. Chosen one, you are entering a different level of discernment when you can hold hope and uncertainty at the same time. You can say, I would love for this to work. And also say, if it does not, I will still be okay. You can say, I care about this person. And also say, I will not ignore reality. You can say, I believe people can change. And then also say, I will judge change by consistent actions. You can say, I forgive. And also say, I have boundaries. You can say, I trust God. And also say, I will use wisdom. That is not weak faith. That is mature faith. And perhaps Jay has become the mirror through which you are finally seeing that. The situation may continue to unfold. There may be another conversation. There may be a moment of unexpected honesty. There may be distance. There may be clarity. There may be an apology. There may be nothing. But whatever comes next, do not return to the old version of yourself that needed to control the outcome. Stay awake. Stay calm. Stay honest. Let the next chapter reveal itself through reality rather than imagination. And if you find yourself tempted to run back into old patterns, pause and remember how much peace you have fought to recover. Remember the nights when your mind would not rest. Remember the moments when you questioned your value. Remember how exhausting it felt to constantly interpret. Remember how much energy uncertainty consumed. Then ask yourself whether you truly want to return to that version of yourself, because perhaps God is not asking you to chase Jay. Perhaps He is asking you to chase clarity. And clarity begins when you stop running after another person's attention and start paying attention to your own life. So continue walking, chosen one. Continue becoming. Continue listening. Continue watching the fruit. Continue allowing time to reveal what urgency tried to hide. And as the story with Jay continues to unfold, remember that not every chapter needs to be understood before you turn the page.